Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Less Stress, More Peace and Happiness Summit. It's been so much fun with so many great speakers, and oh my goodness, we're just learning so many skills. So I know that it's helpful. Thank you for investing your time to join us and learn from these great experts. Today, I have a special surprise for you. We are going to welcome Dr. Elisha Goldstein. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll bring him on. So Elisha Goldstein, PhD, is one of the world's preeminent mindfulness teachers, a clinical psychologist, author of numerous best-selling books, and the creator of his popular YouTube channel, where he shares practical mental health videos designed to educate and inspire people. He's also the creator of the Breakthrough Mental Health Accelerator program called Uncover the Power Within. For the last 20 years, as a psychotherapist and mindfulness educator, he's been at the forefront of integrating curriculum and training for therapists, educators, business professionals, active military, parents, and others in the art and science of mindful living. His books include Uncovering Happiness, The Now Effect, a mindfulness-based stress reduction workbook, and Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Every Day, or MBSR Every Day. And in an increasingly fragmented society, he is working to bring people together so that they may motivate and inspire one another in far-reaching ways. And he lives in Los Angeles with his family. So please welcome with me, Dr. Elisha Goldstein. Hi.
Yay. Really happy to be here.
How are you today?
How am I today? That's a good question. The sun is out. It's a beautiful day here. I'm not in the heat wave that some people are in at the time of this recording. Yeah, I'm not breathing in any smoke right now, so I have to appreciate, all the things that are here. Yeah.
Lovely. Well, we're so appreciative that you're taking your time to join us and help us learn some great techniques. Your resume is beautiful, and I've watched your YouTubes and been on your website and learned so much. So I know that you're going to bring great value to people.
Great.
I just really appreciate it. I'm going to give you the stage. I'm going to go to the background here.
Okay.
And put up your title, and we'll get going. So if you don't mind, just kind of start with a little bit about your story and what brought you to doing the work that you're doing, like the background.
My story is similar to a lot of people's stories on how they find the path to being of service in some way to support other people and support the world. And it's typically through their own suffering, like me. Like some people who are listening that may or may not know my story, and I'll make it kind of short and sweet. I was working in the downtown San Francisco in my early 20s. I mean, the story starts before there, but I'll get the critical points out. And I was working hard and really successful in the corporate world, and I was playing a whole lot harder. And there was reasons I was kind of avoiding maybe some discomfort that was there. And I was abusing my mind and body with a tremendous amount of drugs and alcohol. And I got an intervention happened to me in my life. And I went to an adult retreat center where I practiced mindfulness in relationship with different spiritual principles. And I started to realize that there's a real interconnection to things in this world. And when I developed the ability to be more present, let's say even with like eating an orange is a classic story I have, that my whole body relaxed. And to me, that quote, like the proof is in the eating of the pudding, is so powerful because it's like our experience is our guide. And so when that happened to me, and the guy who was kind of showing me this was like, well, what would the days, weeks, and months ahead be like if there was more of this in your life? I'm like, that's it. Sign me up. And 30 days went by, and I was like voted in the camp to be like this kind of most likely to become some kind of spiritual leader or something like that. Wow. And then 2 weeks after I got back into the corporate world, I just relapsed into my old habits. And that taught me something. And what it taught me was that there's a real interconnection that we have with our environments. We are not solo. We're not kind of solo islands on our own. We do not just pull ourselves up by our bootstraps towards wellness and towards feeling better or towards healing. It all happens in an interconnected environment. And so what that showed me was I need to start kind of organizing the people I'm hanging around and the environment I'm hanging around to lift me up, so I don't have to do it all by myself.
Right.
And so that was a real big insight for me. I started to kind of get involved with mindfulness and the presence of that. And some people might know my background in that, all the books that you had related back there. And then the integration with psychotherapy. I later went back to school to become a psychologist. And I found that nice marriage between mindfulness and psychotherapy, and then the power of community, which is really the topic of what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're exactly right. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Going to a retreat or, having some experience where you feel like it's life changing, but then you get back in the old environment and that kind of takes over. So yeah, it does completely matter who you surround yourself with. But how would somebody go about making that change? If they're listening to this and they're relating and saying, wow, I can totally see that that's happened to me. It seems like a hard thing to do, to cut people out of your life.
No one says anyone needs to be cut out of your life necessarily. And so, and nothing needs to be with any kind of urgency, or it's not, nothing needs to happen like right now. I mean, unless someone's being abused or, harmed in some way, then like some very strict boundaries need to be put into place, or we need to find safety. But in general, for a lot of us, it doesn't need to happen in that way. We're just actually developing something that, what we want to develop is what's the essence of mindfulness, which I know you've had other speakers in here speaking about that in particular, which is just this mindset of curiosity. And so we can just begin with that. But this is about our relationships now. So we're kind of looking at it and saying like, all right, who do I spend most of my time with? Like if I was to create a list of 10 people, like, who do I actually spend most of my time with? Who do I spend most of my attention with?
Right.
And I might look at them and say, okay, or is this person in general someone who's nourishing and supportive or inspiring to me in some way? Or is this person in general, or has some kind of meaning or purpose involved with them? Or is this person in general like depleting to me and harmful in some way to me, and keeping me from either feeling well in life or moving towards my dreams or things I'm wanting to do in life? These are just certain measures that we can look at. This is where it gets a little tricky, because some people say, well, my kids are so depleting to me. Like, and it's like, well, so they provide some kind of meaning and purpose. There's actually an interesting, I'll just kind of little side note. There was a study that came out years ago that was published in the New York Times that said like parents are the unhappiest people on the planet.
Oh gosh.
And what they were doing was they were measuring positive affect and negative affect, basically, just like positive versus negative emotions. They weren't measuring sense of perceived connection, purpose, meaning, these things which are more embedded in more deeper psychological well-being scales. So then a few years later, they kind of like reran it, but with those scales. And what they said was, apparently there's a whole lot of happiness, amongst parents. So that was a little kind of interlude. So when you're looking at those people in your life, you're wanting to say like, all right, well, yeah, kids are stressful. They don't go to bed on time. They don't, they take up my space. I don't have as much calm and peace. And then you want to say, okay, but we're looking at it with like also the scales of kind of meaning, purpose, connection, that kind of thing. And so we're just, again, we don't need to, it's not just black and white. And there are people in our life that are really meaningful, but they're depleting.
Right.
Certain family members or people we're working with that are important to us, maybe.
Right.
And so then we kind of look at like, there's ways to relate to people differently. Once we become more aware that this is someone who's typically kind of depleting to me, that allows us to relate to them in a way where it becomes less depleting or actually becomes a source of strength for us. It's an opportunity to build certain strengths, which we know now, and science has shown over the past couple decades, like strengths of compassion are correlated with a variety of scales of well-being and happiness. And so to develop that inner capacity so that our nervous system doesn't get so inflamed because when we're relating to someone who's difficult, we don't take it personally necessarily, can really help us with our resilience and feeling better in life. And sometimes, if that isn't like all the time, that's why there's so much burnout in the field of caregiving,
Right.
Sometimes when it's like here or there with that, and sometimes we just have to, because that's like, this is like someone in our life that really just needs this, and they're a close family member, or we live with them, and other times we do it and we know it's depleting, and there's something meaningful about it. We know we're being generous with our attention and time and giving and altruism and all of these things that we are part of our values. And so there's something life-giving about that, even though we feel exhausted by it. Now, we can only do that for so long, unless you're even, because even if that's your profession and you know that going in, you get so burnt out. That's why nurses, like, there's such high turnover with nurses, and there's and caregivers in general.
Exactly.
And so there's a need to kind of train both, like, hey, like, how do we make sure we know our environment impacts us so much? People, places, contexts,
Exactly.
everything works off cause and effect. We're literally, if we had better vision, we would see the interplay of energy all around us, and some taking, some giving, and we can generate energy within ourselves too. And we can begin to organize our relationship with our environment in such a way that it enhances our capacity to be at our best. And that's kind of what we're talking about here, is not the relationships in our life are like the primary thing. So how do we use that in a way to make the habits or the ways we want to live in life easier? How do we take advantage of that? And how do we relate to our relationships in a way that enhance our well-being and resilience? How do we use that understanding of the interconnection? Like, some of your listeners for sure, and yourself, are familiar with Thich Nhat Hanh, who was a great Vietnamese Buddhist monk and teacher and incredibly prolific writer. And he used this term that said, we inter-are. Like, that's the reality. And Dan Siegel, who you might be familiar with, who is a psychiatrist, he's also very prolific. He created this like term called mui, which is like, the reality is there's me and we, and he kind of like put it together into this one word. He likes to create words. And so, yeah. And so, we're like, all right, so that's a reality. All the quantum scientists and, anyone at the edge of science, like, recognizes the interrelationship of all things. And all spiritual traditions have known this for a long time, but science says, very clear on it now.
Exactly.
And so if everything does work off cause and effect, and we understand that, then how can we be smarter about our relationships and in a way that plays off our brains' implicit decision making to make decisions for us in the direction that we want to go into? That's sort of what we're after.
Right. So it's becoming aware and conscious of the situation and what we can do to be our best in it. If we can't remove ourselves from it, and develop the habits. So what would you say about habit change?
Like, if I want to,
a little bit at a time, or do you find it's easier just sometimes cold turkey for people if they're changing?
So that's like classic habit change, like stuff, which is like, what how do I go? What are the tools? And what I'm speaking about is something to play off the brain's implicit decision making, not explicit tools. So we can get to the explicit tools. Like, what do you think you can do? Break it into smaller steps, and just do a little bit at a time. Atomic habits, build it up, that kind of stuff. And then there's if you know somebody who's playing guitar and you want to play guitar, spend more time with them, make more contact with them. What's that going to do? That's going to bring top of mind the importance for you of playing guitar. And if that's top of mind more, my vision when I'm looking around, I'm more likely to see a guitar, and I'm more likely to pick it up. Like, when you're going to buy a certain car,
right?
This is the priming effect. That when you look at, I want to buy. I remember years ago when it was like, oh, the Prius came out, and it's like, I want to get a Prius. And like all of a sudden I was like, Prius is everywhere. My wife got pregnant. Everyone's pregnant everywhere.
Right.
And, it's like the same thing. Like, so I want to play guitar. I want to learn how to do that. I want to go exercise more. I want to eat better. All these things that we all know would be, in the realms of play or health or wellness. Then what we need to do, or it would be smart to do, knowing how cause and effect and interconnection works, is to say, well, who do I know who plays guitar or eats well or exercises? How do I make more contact with them? Just even reaching out via text, setting up a time to talk with them, like, or just like messaging. These are all forms of contact that we have right now, but FaceTime, whatever it is, you don't need to talk about guitar even. You just know, or exercise, or, that you just know that they represent that to you. And so that's going to help it be top of mind for you.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the same works in the negative direction. You want to do more drugs, hang around people who do more drugs. You want to kind of sit on your couch and eat a bag of potato chips. We know that Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler years ago out of the UC San Diego and I think University of Toronto came out with their framing. They mined a really the longest longitudinal study on heart disease, which was called the Framingham study. I don't know if you heard of this. And so they mined the data from that. And what they found was they were looking at social relationships. What they found was that obesity is contagious up to 3 degrees, as it turns out. So if your friend's friend was overeating, you're more likely to overeat by a certain percentage.
Wow.
And so they had different percentages for neighbors versus this versus that, but they did that, and they did that with loneliness and happiness too. And so they found this kind of 3-degree effect. And so there's something about that. There's a reality behind emotional contagion, behavioral contagion. There's studies that have shown someone got sick in a classroom. All of a sudden, everyone started getting sick in the classroom. They got rushed to the emergency room. Nothing was wrong with any of them. Wow. So, there's a contagion around us. So if we know that, then it's like, all right, I don't necessarily need to work so hard at like all these, like pull myself by my bootstraps. I got to make sure to it's all wise advice, set block time, to ask, to figure out your reason why you want to do it, set atomic habits. These are all great advice. We're talking about something different here a little bit that can go with that. It's not at odds with it, but goes with it. Right. We're talking about playing off our brain's implicit decision-making, which can make it more automatic. So what's that about? That's about how do I make things top of mind for me more often so my eyes will see this thing, be more likely to follow through on that action. And so we ask, I for me know that if I didn't have a like kind of a buddy in some way that I had an appointment with to go do a particular exercise a couple times a week, I know I should be able to do it. How many of us say that? I should be able to do it. I don't know why I just keep kind of yo-yoing with this thing. I should be able to do it. Should be able to play guitar. I should be able to play piano. I should be able to exercise more, eat better, or all these different habits we want to do. But you don't consistently. Exactly. For most people, I should be able to meditate more, but you don't consistently. Now, there's a person who's listening to this on the other end saying, well, I do. And that's true. You're an outlier. And for most people, they don't.
Right.
And so you think about some other habit. You probably are kind of inconsistent with that. But if you want to be consistent, find somebody who wants to be consistent too. And you're just you increase your probability of being consistent with it. And if you're consistent with something, you're going to create change in it. And so our relationships matter in a huge way. And so we're talking about the power of community. You want to find 2, 3, 4, 5 people. You probably don't even need more than that. So, that's going to, again, remind you, give you the energy to be consistent and committed with that habit, which is going to make you feel really good.
So I wonder, I was thinking when you were saying that about, what do you think about online community?
I have built an entire highly impactful coaching program in an online community. And so connection is at the epicenter of feeling well. When we feel disconnected, we feel more disease, we get more stress. So that creates more cellular inflammation. loneliness has, been called by our Surgeon General the real pandemic, that's here.
Yeah.
And so,
Isn't it?
yeah. And so community, if it's done well,
Mhm.
can be really powerful online.
Even
So
online, right?
even online, like,
Yeah, right.
people want to learn how to relax their nervous system. They want to learn how to be more focused and be more present in their lives. They want to learn how to be more compassionate, love themselves more, have more courage in their lives. They want to recognize, like, how do I be more joyful in my life and happier, or how to feel more connected or balanced. All of these things we want. Now, if you have a model that allows people to be vulnerable
Mhm.
online, where they can feel safe
Mhm.
to be able to share their experiences, their obstacles, the challenges they're happening, or the adventures and joys they're experiencing, or the shifts and changes they're experiencing, or feel like you can ask any question you want, and it can happen live,
Mhm.
and both synchronously and asynchronously. It can happen both.
Mhm.
But there's a great deal of perceived connection that can happen online, because you can see people, like we're seeing each other, right? You can hear their voice. You get to know their stories. You get brought
Mhm.
in to their lives, and
Right, right.
even people start reaching out to each other and say, "Oh, you said your mom was, sick or something," or like, and then they'll like send them virtual flowers, or like whatever will happen.
Right.
People feel loved and supported and encouraged. So yes, I think online communities can be incredibly powerful for people in the level of connection, inspiration, and support.
Mhm.
Like,
That's
but the
good to
communities,
know.
yeah, but the communities we think about when we think about community, like the first way I was introduced online was like Facebook community or X community or whatever community. And those communities, some of those communities are run actually decently, but mostly those are kind of like not like support,
Right.
not a high connection community
Mhm.
that's there. But if people who run like really great online communities, that aren't like 1,000 or 20,000 people, right? But it's part of a program where it's a smaller community, so you can get that kind of like
You
real,
feel connected, yeah.
yeah, you like know the people.
Right. I love
That
that.
can be powerful. Yeah.
So I love that. So this is it's interesting because it's been a completely different subject than a lot of the other speakers, but I totally understand, and it brings great value on being able to manage stress and overwhelm, and making good choices and building supportive community. And yeah, it's just really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, so, because we could sit here and talk about all the other teachers, the people you've interviewed, no doubt have kind of given very practical skills on mindfulness and meditation and stress reduction and relaxation and increasing joy, or whatever these things are. These are all habits that we want to build.
Mm-hmm.
Now we realize we're not alone in that. And
Yeah.
in order to really build that in a more enduring way and to make it easier,
Mm-hmm.
we have to recognize that we're not alone. And the reality of what I call sparks, these kind of sparks are energy and information that we're always interchanging, right? Like you and I right now are exchanging energy and information,
Mm-hmm.
and and someone who's listening right now is also receiving that through time and space.
Mm-hmm.
These words are landing on you, who you're listening right now, at a different time than this is even being recorded, and yet it's having an impact. It's bringing up a thought. It might create a feeling that's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's landing on you, and you're experiencing it right now.
Right.
That gives us energy, or depletes us, or inspires us.
Mm-hmm.
It gives us ideas to take action with. Now, you didn't have to try and do anything. You're just receiving and listening. And the same
Right.
thing happens if you really consider the reality around interconnection
Mm-hmm.
and social and emotional contagion and behavioral contagion, which the social sciences are very clear about. And you start saying, like, all right, well, I don't have anyone that plays guitar or is exercises, or like, so how do I find these people? Like, you're telling me, like, I look at my list of people and like none of these people have this type of thing.
Right.
And and then it's like, all right, good. That's fine too, because I
Um,
promise you there are communities out there. If you just start kind of like just allow yourself without a sense of urgency and just with a sense of mindfulness and curiosity, which is just you're starting from a great place with just being aware of a need you have or desire you have, saying like, I want to be curious about it. Are there, or just ask yourself, if your mind has doubt about it, are there communities out there that have somebody I can trust, a guide, and or a group of people who are all also interested in living in or doing this particular habit or whatever it is, and do they have something you can learn with? And so I know in our Uncover the Power Within program, it's a therapeutic coaching program. So it's really for people who want to, build the mental foundations to experience more enduring change in both their healing and their happiness. And, it has those elements, and that's kind of what you're looking for. You're looking for like, is there a guide I can trust that can inspire me? Are there people that I, that are somewhat value aligned to me, at least in this respect? And is there something I'm going to learn from this? And is there repetition? Okay. So I do exposure repetition, because if there's exposure repetition, it's going to live more top of mind for me more regularly. I'm way more likely to do it.
Right. So it's a community of support on a lot of levels then.
Learning and support, and really inspiration. Like that's what you want. Like inspiration, the idea of like, a thought came to me. Like you inspired a thought in me. That's really what we're looking for. I mean, we have a brain that has long-term memory and short-term memory. We want more and more of this to live in our short-term memory, which means we need repetitive exposure to the thing that's reminding me about this thing. That's all. And then when I get stuck, because I'm like, oh man, I'm being so reminded, but I'm still not doing this thing. We need someone we can trust that we can say, hey, knows a little bit more than we do, called a mentor, and say, this is like in AA, they have, sponsor, and organized religion. They have the rabbi, the priest, the whatever, and, therapists out there, whatever, coaches. And so we can say like, hey, I'm stuck, like, support me. And so you have this person now who can now give you a little twist, kind of something you didn't see maybe, and then like help you get unstuck, and then you can move forward again. Otherwise, we just stay looping.
Yes.
The same old habits, same old life. And I'll just say this one thing, which is like this guy, Abraham Joshua Heschel, who was a peace activist and a rabbi, and he said, life is routine, and routine is resistance to wonder.
Oh, that's good.
So we're wired for routine, just to get stuck in this routine. And that's why we get so many people who are just like blasé in their life. The novelty has disappeared. And we want to be able to get unstuck, but we need people who are a little further along and know a little bit more than we do sometimes to be able to reach out and say like, how do I get unstuck? I'm feeling unstuck. And that person who's now in my orbit, one of those people in my community, can support me so I can accelerate the shifts I want to make.
I love that.
Actually moving forward.
Yes, I love that. And that's actually, one of the main reasons for putting on the summit is I feel like a lot of people, especially since the pandemic, do feel stuck and, just are having a hard time coming back to connection and direction. The just sustained isolation and fear and uncertainty and all the stuff that was going on in addition to, at the same time, it was really hard for people. And so that's exactly what this is about, is bringing together people, that are offering their expertise to help people get unstuck. And I think it's really interesting that it sounds like with the right person and the right mindset and keeping these changes that you want top of mind, it sounds like it's something that you can create fairly easily and quickly. Would you agree?
You can put it in place, and you can find the elements for it. You can find one person. I mean, you can identify it as a couple people. It can happen pretty quickly. To gel with it, it takes a little time of getting like anything else. You're kind of like your body and mind are kind of getting used to these relationships, and taking what is supportive, leaving the rest that's not, and just kind of seeing the way you work with it, because it becomes its own. Just like I always, sometimes I have a very small private practice that I work with people in, and mostly I kind of lead these programs. And sometimes I see couples, and in the couples, I say, look, there's three things going on here. There's you, and there's a relationship, and you're all entities here. And the relationship is unwell. You might be, whatever it is. And so for this is also a relationship that you're coming into as you enter in with some people or a person, or even redefining a relationship with people that you have right now. And it's okay. Your brain just takes it just needs time to acclimate and stay curious about what you're noticing, like what's working for you, what's not working for you. What's not working for you, stay curious about that. Why is it not working? Like kind of explore it a little bit. There's no urgency in life. We all feel this urgency because, we have these, but like really, like the years are going to go by in the same amount of years that are going to go by. They're going to end probably in a similar time that they're going to end. And it's like, well, how do you want to be in relationship with your life during this time? And you don't need to fall prey to the urgency that's there. And even with this idea that we're exploring right now around the power of community, you don't need to feel urgency to get a community immediately or to get that person. Just the first step is just what you've learned from other people here, which is just to be curious. That moment of mindfulness, just kind of relax, release your body. That's the 2 free meditations. One of them is really about learning how to release.
I'll put that up. That's a good segue into, if you would explain to people the gift that you're giving the listeners.
Well, one of them here, I'll just explain this one, which is learning how to really release your nervous system. I mean, this is the foundational meditation that's given in the Uncover the Power Within program, because at the foundation, before we dive into our mindfulness practice or presence or joy or, whatever we want to kind of build these capacities in our life, we really need to learn how to relax our nervous system. And so we can begin to release what's there, so we can widen that space between stimulus and response. And then we can input the seeds that we're wanting to kind of plant into there to be able to grow. And so that's one of the things there that you're going to be given, or you're going to kind of be able to opt into to see and begin to kind of grow in your life. Same thing there. When you're practicing meditations, just be curious about, what did I notice? Where do I get confused? Is there some way I'm feeling stuck? And then just, if there's someone you can reach out to say, like, I don't understand this, or this is feeling really good. Something like this feels good. Well, if something feels good, it's typically good. And so just kind of practice more of that, know? Yeah.
And so not having a lot of judgment about what you're noticing, just be more in, like you said, a state of curiosity and allow things to evolve.
So that's, it's interesting, because the classic definition of mindfulness is really intentionally paying attention to the present moment with non-judgmental awareness, not judging. And it's a difficult definition, because for most people in our day and age, it flies in the face of, well, of course we judge. We have to judge whether we want to go left or right, whether the person in the alley who's swinging the switchblade is good to walk toward or away from. Like we have it. So it's a little confusing to me, even that definition, which has been the definition that's been given to us in the Western world when mindfulness first kind of came in. And so I like to change that definition slightly, which is intentionally paying attention to this moment with an engaged curiosity. When you're curious about something, you're implicitly non-judgmental, but it at least gives a direction of what you're doing. You're actually just being curious about something.
Yeah.
So you can see for yourself.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. So the other thing that I usually ask the speakers is, which I think you've already given, great examples, but if you had like just a simple takeaway, an action step that somebody could easily do at home, but I think you've probably already addressed.
Yeah. I mean, I would just be curious about, so in the spirit of what we're talking about here, I would just be curious about, and this doesn't have to do with people in your life being good or bad, or that's the non-judgmental piece, but it's really about, like, all right, be specific about something. Like, you don't have to go to the nourishing depletion. You can say, like, hey, I want to exercise more. Okay. So who do I spend most of my time with? Does this person give me the idea or energy? This person is really supportive. They want me to exercise more, but they're not going to exercise with me, and they don't exercise themselves. They're a good person. I mean, they're encouraging to you, but they're not going to rate super high for you on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as like people that inspire, encourage, give you motivation to do that. And again, it doesn't mean you need to throw this person out. It's just that you're just being, if you want to exercise more, you want to bring, yeah, there is this guy, or woman, I don't have much contact with her, but she's been a friend of mine for years, but I don't really talk to her much. But I know I see her on Instagram, Facebook. She's out adventurous all the time. Well, okay, maybe that would be good to be someone that you can make a little more contact with.
Mm-hmm.
And, that, again, doesn't mean this other person over is bad.
Right.
It means that when you're talking about exercise, they're not really the person, they're not on the top 5 list in your orbit for people you want to be in more contact with. So that's all that is. Simple. It's like, just make a little bit more contact with this person, then see what you notice. And if you don't notice a lot, then maybe a little bit more contact, or maybe there's another person you want to bring, or maybe you want a guide or a coach or it's all about like what works. You want to increase the probability of you actually following through on a certain action plan, and you're not that person who's like just highly committed on their own, then put people in your orbit who do that. Either a buddy or a coach or something like that. And I guarantee you're going to increase the probability of actually doing that. That's it. It's like just that simple.
Right. That's perfect. So I love the gifts. I hate that our time is over, because I know we could learn so much more and continue on. The gifts are very generous, and we will have a link below the video for people to access them. And also, I just want to encourage people to go to Dr. Elisha's website, and there's a lot of great stuff on there that you can also learn. So we'll have a link to that as well. But I'm just going to bring you on so I can say thank you so much. And I really, really appreciate you taking the time to share with us. This has been really interesting and enlightening.
Oh, great. Yeah. Thanks for doing this good work. And hopefully it gives people the sparks they need to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. We just really want to encourage people that there's a better way. Right. And never lose hope. There's always a way. So, well, thank you so much. You have a great day.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.